evening. Welcome back to the show. I'm Chad, and as you know, this show is something I do on the side, but it's also part of Comic Watch. Tonight we're going to be talking with John Dudley, who is the creator of Big Shoulders. I believe we featured it on our crowdfunder corner, and he was nice enough to send me a copy, and even nicer to stop by and chat. So let me bring him in, and we'll find more about him in the book. Hey,
Hello.
how's it going?
It's going well, man. Thanks for having me, Chad. Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Again, I want to thank you for sending me a book. It was a really nice read, and I can't wait to find out more about it and about you. So let's start there. Tell me a little bit about yourself as a both a reader and creator.
Yeah, I've been creating comics for about 10 years or so. I'm based out of Chicago. The new book, Big Shoulders, is very Chicago centric, and it baked into the narrative. I guess I'll get to that in a minute. But as a reader myself, I was definitely a Marvel kid. X-Men comics were my first obsession, first series where I was like really looking for each issue, going in the bins, even for back issue diving. Grew up in Bangkok, Thailand, so American comics were um, relatively hard to come by, but there was a shop near me that had a big, literally the way I remember it, and this is when I was like 6 or 7 years old, but the way I remember it was just had like literally like a box, a big like 6 foot wide box, just comics, just stacked willy nilly, terrible condition. And I would just dive through that thing and find Uncanny X-Men issue 140 and desperately want to know what happened in issue 139, but I'd never know. You could never find that one. Um, so trying to piece things together, maybe what got me thinking about actually writing comics a little bit, and thinking about things more structurally, as I'm saying it out loud. Maybe that had something to do with it.
Yeah. So when did you said you've written comic books for 10 years. So what kind of, besides your obvious love of the medium, what kind of inspired you to do so?
It was comics, media coverage, and podcasts that kind of got me connected with like-minded folks. I'm lucky in Chicago. We've got a pretty vibrant comic creator community. And I met up with another Chicagoan, Don Cardenas, and we made, actually, I got visual aids right here. We made this book, Packs of the Low Country. Neither of us had ever made like a full length comic before. So we did the really dumb and awesome thing, and we made like 150-page action horror graphic novel. And I'm really proud of it. I mean, we even got like pinups from like Mike Norton in
Yeah,
here
I know Mike.
somehow. Yeah, somehow through like a lot of incredible twists of fate, we met up with a lot of like-minded comic creators along the way, lit some fires under our butts, and both Don and I have kept at it in the years since, and led me to Big Shoulders #1, which is hot off the press. This one is with artist and co-creator Scott Gray,
Mhm.
who worked on Doctor Who comics for a very long time. I don't want to date him, but I think he's worked on Doctor Who comics for about 20 years as a writer. But he's the artist on Big Shoulders. Uh, Actually met him by way of some of his Doctor Who prints that he was selling online. And I'm not even terribly familiar with Doctor Who, but some of the imagery really caught my attention, and I started a correspondence with him. and we had some like-minded storytelling ideas. And as the ideas started flowing, we really meticulously plotted out and built this story that's since grown into what's going to be a 6-issue series. And like I said, it's a love letter to Chicago and crossroad journeys, and thinking about Chicago is the crossroads of America, and thinking about all the different kinds of stories that have crossed through a city like this.
Mhm.
So true to that, our story has different genres of tales taking place at the same time. We've got a fantasy story about an immortal who's been in Chicago for a while, tracking down something ancient. And I don't want to give too much away, but
Oh,
he's
well, my next question was, give us a kind of a overview of the book and what inspired it.
yeah, for sure. So I uh, wanted to tell a story about Chicago. That was definitely central in mind. It's a city, like I mentioned, I grew up in Bangkok and lived in, li- kind of rambled around a good bit, but Chicago was a very welcoming place. I'd never been here until after college. Um, but feel like it almost it's not a very prideful city. There's not an arrogance to it, I should say. It's a warm, welcoming place that I think is underrated. I think a common refrain you'll get from folks that have never been to Chicago is they're kind of blown away um, by what an impressive city it is and how warm and welcoming of a place it is. And I wanted to pay it forward in a way, or at least capture that feeling for me of how this is a place you can be from Chicago way more quickly, in my experience, than anywhere else I've lived. My family's all originally from the South, and I love a lot of things about the southern states I've lived in, but there's kind of a you can be here, but you're not from here mentality if your boots haven't been on the ground. Whereas Chicago invited me in. I met my now wife, raising little Chicagoans now. Um, it doesn't get enough credit for that reality. So I wanted to tell a story about. You'll notice a lot of the protagonists, the various protagonists in these interwoven stories, are transplants, are people that are crossing through and finding things as they go. And I wanted to impart that kind of feeling and experience you can get in Chicago or in any crossroad place, but specifically Chicago in our case. I really wanted to pack that in as much as possible. So it's a love letter, really.
And who are the main characters that the story follows?
So I mentioned there is an immortal character, which is also kind of a fun device for narrative device to be able to have someone semi omnipotent, someone who's been here long enough that can tell you and give you some backstory on various elements. But this immortal, not technically immortal, he ages very very slowly. Um, is recognizing that this period of history we're in, um, with the digital age of the last 30 years and now AI, really at the forefront, um, represents a time of great change. And it's led him to recognize he's too old. The world has left him by. So he is going to pass the mantle for the first time. He his predecessor passed the mantle during the advent of language, like 50,000 years ago. Literally, a Neanderthal who wasn't ready to understand the spoken word. It was too much for the Neanderthals. He passed the mantle, and now making kind of the not so bold statement. I think that um, the age we're all living in, anyone listening to this, are living in literally is as monumental a shift for our species, as was, the advent of the written word, which happened far more slowly than what we're experiencing, and likewise the advent of the spoken word. So we look at kind of those three inflection points and say, we're living in one right now, and an immortal can look you in the eye and say, yes, this is my opinion, but in the book, it's fact. Um, so this kid, Coda Walker, one of my favorite characters in the books. In the book, he works for a video game company that's using AI and has fired all its staff, and is basically just an evil empire. And we're going to learn that Greg, the immortal I've been speaking about, it isn't the only old timer. In fact, there are more nefarious old timers as well, and Coda is now going to have to be tasked with bringing one of them down once and for all, hopefully. That's one of my favorite characters. But yeah, like I said, there's a few interwoven in here. Would you like to learn about there's also a crime noir kind of sci-fi X-Files one, and there's also
Sure.
yeah. So that one we don't get to see them as much in the first issue, but we have two FBI agents that are on a unofficial mission in Chicago. That this one's really fun. I'm really excited. In the second issue, we're going to get to know them a lot more. But you do get a little taster in the first issue. They are here looking for something that may be at the bottom of Lake Michigan. It's a very like X-Files opening. There might be something down there. And as they're coming through into the city, they're even in the first issue, you're going to start to see the crossroads motif at work. You're going to see them literally in a cab cross by another character, and that's an opportunity for us to shift back to that narrative. Throughout the story, you're going to see a lot of literal crossroads, trains and automobiles or strolls down the road. Always a good opportunity to move us to the next story. Speaking of which, probably my favorite is we've got a character named Spiff Plunkett, who's part of a band in Chicago, an unnamed band at the beginning of our story that's trying to find their way, and they do suck. They're a bad band, but they're working at it. And key to that endeavor, Spiff actually has a little magic. He's got a little magic in him. This is our fantasy story, and with a little bit of horror tinge as well. He's drawing some dragon magic when he's connecting with his art. When he's at his kit, when he's hitting the drums, he's using some ancient magic that's in his bloodline. He doesn't know this yet. But when he plays and when they have their shows, things are going to get pretty hellish pretty quick. They might even be able to tap into it to their benefit, but they're going to have some things to learn, and maybe this is an example of where that immortal character might be able to give them some advice. Even if it's not his core storyline, maybe there'll be a crossing there where he's going to say, "Oh, this is the kind of thing I've experienced before." He's been around the block.
So was this, and I know this book was kickstarted. Was that your first Kickstarter experience, or
Uh,
what's your how did this experience compare to others if you've done them?
yeah, I did. My only other Kickstarter experience was a failed Kickstarter, sadly. That book, Packs of the Low Country, which turned out really well. We worked, issue by issue. We got them out, and then we worked to kickstart the collected edition, which sadly we didn't hit our goal, which was really, really, like a kick to the teeth. So then coming back 6-7 years later for this Big Shoulders Kickstarter was like one of the more terrifying one of the more terrifying things I've ever done. But we were really lucky to cross all the hurdles and get it funded. And the reception has been really awesome, especially here in Chicago. Most of my local shops are already carrying the book on shelves, um, and was able to get some good local coverage here. Everything good I've been saying about Chicago, it's kind of been paying itself forward a little bit. So it's I'm feeling very good right now about comic making.
And I know that in the back of the book you kind of give readers a little Chicago assignment.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I hope I don't want to give too much homework. I want you to have fun while you're reading your book. But yeah, I did give some options that could, if you're curious to learn more about Chicago, or more specifically, engage with some art that was either itself inspired by Chicago, or made by folks in town. It's there for you if you want it.
I'm all about Wilco, so
Oh, sweet. Well, I have I'm doing something with Wilco in the second issue. I'm really excited about. Um,
oh,
I'm yeah. There's some back matter that's that not quite back matter. It's extra story. Incorporating some prose work, where I'm having some fun with some Wilco lyrics. Um,
well, yeah, that's sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I don't want to say too much about that, but that's just funny that you brought that up, because it's going to be the kind of thing I'd imagine 99 out of 100 readers won't even know it's happening. But because it's an aside that's not happening in Chicago. So
Mhm.
if I'm having a scene not in Chicago, I want to find a way to insert some good Chicago lore, even if it's so far under the radar most people don't notice it. I'm still going to make sure it's there.
And I also kind of like the way that the book ends with like the email, and so that was a nice little
Oh,
or a different way to kind of end it.
thank you. Yeah, that was Scott's idea. Scott, definitely a co-creation through and through. He's bounced a lot of really good ideas my way, that we've been able to bring to life, in various ways. He also um, designed our cover. A lot of cool motifs. We've done a lot with our logo. We obviously, if we're Big Shoulders is a nickname for Chicago, the city of big shoulders. So we incorporate a lot of Chicago imagery into our logo work. And at the back of the issue as well, you can see kind of some of our history with the logo, and different Chicago images we've crammed in there. Um, we also have an alternate cover from Charlie Adlard of Walking Dead fame. Uh, we only printed 200 of these. I really love this cover as well. So something to keep your eye out for, I guess.
So tell me a bit about the rest of the creative team, because you talked about Scott. Who else joined you for this?
Yeah, so we have Faz Chodroy. He did color work for the first few pages of issue one. We did kind of like a few pages early, as kind of a test run to kind of just get a feel for the flow of the book. Um, but then after we did the Kickstarter, Scott colored the rest of the book. But Faz did excellent work. Yeah, I would definitely hope to work with him again in the future. But no, Scott. If I'm honest, the work that attracted me to Scott in the first place was his art prints and the vivid color. he uses in his own color work is really a big part of what drew me to Scott in the first place. So I love having him do the color work.
So tell me a little bit about the way you guys work. When you're compiling the story and the art, how I'm sure it obviously was collaborative, but have you guys developed a process, or was it um, yeah, just tell me about tell me
Yeah.
about
Yeah, so we I'm a wordy guy. I write very verbose scripts. So in when I say things are meticulously plotted, I mean it. Sometimes to a detriment. Have to pare it down. Scott does a great job of paring things down where necessary, of consolidating what might be stretched across 2 pages into one, which I'm a big fan of. At the end of the day, I'm also a big fan of compressed storytelling in comics. I think as a medium, if you're not moving, the, you know, 3 pages of somebody brushing their teeth and getting ready for bed is not using the medium very well. So we try. The first issue of Big Shoulders is 40 pages long, so it's in 36, 34 pages of pure story. It's a double sized comic, and it's we're moving, we're introducing a lot in those pages. And I think working with Scott and like really paying excessive attention to not just every page, but every panel, every every bubble is meaningful, and we work slowly as a result. It'll be several months surely before we could finish the second issue, and we wouldn't want it any other way. Even though we have full fidelity scripts for the whole process, we're still going to make sure we take all of our due diligence to make sure we get this right, because we feel like we're in love with this story. We hope others will be as well, but we're taking this very seriously.
Now, who inspires you as a writer, or who do you kind of look to for inspiration? Or
Hmm. Um, a lot. My comic collection. I'm not the most precious with my comics. I'm the kind of person who rolls them up and puts them in my back pocket. But I never
this
forget.
interview is over.
Yeah, no, but I never forget. I never forget a good comic. I kind of joked about decompressed storytelling in comics. That being said, I did love a lot of Bendis comics. I was thinking of him as I said that. Um, kind of the most decompressed storyteller there is. I think about Frank Miller though, when I start thinking about economy. A lot of my favorite creators are artists as well, like Frank Miller. I think about, I mean, obviously Alan Moore. I think about Chris Claremont. Talk about wordy. Um, maybe I inherited some of that. Definitely the books I was reading the most of in my day. I probably was reading more Chris Claremont than anyone else, just with the X-Men connection. And as I really dove all the way to the hobby, I went all the way back and read every Claremont X-Men book. I was too young as they were coming out, but that was my first major comic excursion, was going back and reading all of the 80s, early 90s X-Men. So that's probably the best answer.
Now, you mentioned you've been writing comics for 10 years. What do you know now about the craft that you wish you had known back then? And if you could go back and tell yourself, what would you say?
Um, we so when Don and I made Packs of the Low Country, um, we had a reviewer call it indie scuzz. I remember that quote. They called it indie scuzz, and I remember like kind of being offended. If I could go back, I would lean fully into that. It's more of a badge of honor now. In fact, like recently, looking back when we collected everything, we I mentioned the Kickstarter failed, so we what we did was we printed on cheaper paper,
Hmm.
and I think it looks better. I think this like cheaper, you can't see on a video really, but this cheaper newsprint quality, because what we were building was, what this is indie scuzz, man. And this paper quality is fitting. So yeah, I would say embracing the indie scuzz, not trying to pretend like we were making like a Marvel or DC, you know, top shelf superhero comic, but what we were making was indie scuzz, and I think I would lean into that more.
So is there, anything else that about Big Shoulders number one that maybe we didn't talk about that you would want to make sure people knew about?
Um, yeah, I would say actually we got a website where you can learn more about the book. It's just bigshoulderscomic.com. Um, you can learn more about the book. You could buy a copy there. If you're in Chicago, we do have it on shelves at most shops. There's still a few more I need to hit up, but most of most of the most well-known shops in Chicago have it on shelves currently. Um, I'm going to be boothing at a lot of cons in the next few months. The next
Hmm.
big one I think is Baltimore Comic Con. We'll have a booth
Okay.
there, and then I
Unfortunately, I
think
can't make it this year.
lame. We'll
I know.
send an emissary to stop by the booth.
They never, check with me when they go to schedule it. Schedule it either around my son's birthday or my wife's birthday, and it's just,
I
but I love
understand.
Baltimore. I've been there. I've been there, a couple times, and I love the fact that it's a comic book convention. Just pretty much comic books all the way.
That's what I've heard. I've never been. I've heard that about the Heroes Con in Charlotte. I've heard that's a really good proper comic con where the focus is on comics.
Hmm.
But then C2E2 is the big one I have on my um, to-do list. I haven't. I don't think they've even announced sign up dates yet, but that's the biggest one in Chicago.
Hmm.
Since I've got this comic that's so Chicago centric. I mean, we have a poem about Chicago on the back of our book. Um, I very much hope we'll have a booth there. I think we will. I've boothed it before, and I think I've got a pretty good pitch.
Cool. Well, um, so yeah, when issue two will be a couple months or so.
Yeah, I don't want to put Scott in a box. He's got a lot. He's got a lot of projects on his plate on
Mhm.
top of Big Shoulders.
Yeah.
Big Shoulders is his art project, but he does a lot of writing as well.
Yeah.
For various publishers. So um, I will say that I very much hope to have it at our booth at C2E2 in March. I think that's safe. um, yeah, let's say that.
Well, if when it's time to kickstart issue two, we should
Oh,
do this again and catch it.
we've got a pre-launch page. That's what I should have said. Hit
Okay.
hit that notify link. I'll share a link to stay notified for the issue 2 Kickstarter, which should go live someday. But the pre-launch page is already up.
All right. So keep that. And where can people find you if you're on social media?
Yeah, I set up there's Big Shoulders Instagram account. in a Big Shoulders Blue Sky account,
Mhm.
but really it's just me, just Big Shoulders comic, um, aka John Dudley.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure chatting with you. I'm glad we were able to chat about the book. And again, thank you for the copy. And I look forward to issue two.
No, thanks, Chad. Well, if you or any other Comic Watch crew are in Baltimore or C2E2, definitely hope to hang.
All right. Well, when you're in Baltimore, you'll have to go right across the street from the convention. There's a nice bar there.
That
So,
sounds good. After after a long day sitting behind a booth, that doesn't sound like the end of the world.
so one last question. If you're a baseball fan, the Cubs or the White Sox?
Oof. Uh, I do have to go Cubs. I do have to go Cubs. My wife's family are Sox fans, um, so that's a tough. You yeah. I hate going official, but I live a mile west of Wrigley Field, and they're playoff bound this year, whereas the White Sox, I think they literally broke a record last season for winning or losing the most games ever for any MLB team. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, White Sox.
All right. Well, it was like I said, it was great talking to you, and we'll be in touch.
Sweet. Thanks, Chad. Really appreciate it.
Mhm.